Welcome everyone. Today's project is a very large and intense one. We are rerouting my entire control panel layout. I want to actually move it from where you've seen it placed to over here under the mountain area in this nice little shelf that I have. But first things first, we have to build this shelf. So, at my shop, we are going to get started doing that. I am just using some 1x pine that I bought from my local Menards store.
Alright, I'm gonna make this 30 inches. Let's get right at 16. Wow, that glue wasn't held very well. Okay.
So this is the main shelf section that I just cut. Right now I'm cutting the side pieces out for it. Yes, folks, just so you know, I do recommend wearing safety glasses, but I am notoriously known for not doing that. I use my hat, and I duck it down.
So this stands up. I'll put my arrow down there. That will work perfect. Put bolts down the bottom, bolts on the top, glue it all together. Looks good. I like it.
So now I'm just using 1-inch crown staples on a staple gun with glue holding it into place.
Beautiful. Perfect. There it is. So that's all of those. Okay. Oh, that looks awesome.
So now after I got the main structure of it built, going through, sanding off all the edges, all the burrs on it, sanding it down. I'm not staining this, I'm just going to keep it the color that it is. So making everything smoothed out the best we can. This is just with a 5-inch orbital sander and 120 grit sandpaper.
Okay, let's put some screws in it. All right, contrary to popular belief, having 9,000 screws in a board does not make it stronger or weaker. Actually, it does make it weaker. You don't need to have a whole lot of screws in this thing to make it work and to make it hold better. Let's put 4 screws in the back of this thing. Man, that looks beautiful. That was awesome. All right, let's get a couple screws in on this thing. Another quick woodworking tip, try never to drill through knots in your wood. One, it's harder than heck to drill through them. Two, it can split the wood out because sometimes those knots aren't glued in very well. Now this is actually really good, so I wasn't as worried about this one. Oh, that looks good. That's gonna work perfect. So it's gonna hold up just like that, put my bolts in, good to go. All right. There it is.
All right, now down to the underside where I'm going to start adding my connection pieces. I've made these little block L bracket pieces. This is actually going to be where the track power will plug into. So now I'm actually going to take my 3D printed connection plate and attach it into place. This is the exact same kind of plate that I also used on my HO Polar Express layout. Next thing I'm adding is a 12 volt DC plug. And then finally on this front edge here, I'm adding another bracket that will be used for the MRC extension plate. And what I'm actually going to be using that for is to charge my 2 wireless controllers that are sitting in the cradles. And finally, I need to add my last bracket. This is the switch control that will run the tunnel portal sidetrack. This will allow me to turn on and off that track power. This is just a 3D printed holder that I made. Alright, now that I've got all that done, it is time to cut out the existing wiring. Because everything went down to this other end, I have to remove all this and get it set up so I can wire it up to go clear down to the mountain end. So now I'm starting to wire up my new track leads. I'm using 14 gauge wire. Soldering each connection to make a better contact point instead. Also heat shrinking each connection. And of course, got to do this several times. There's 3 separate sections I have to get wired up first to go in between each one of my sections that make up that whole train layout. So that way when it comes apart, I can actually just pull those clips apart from each other and the whole thing will tear down. So now I've got the wiring started in underneath each section. I'm at the first joint seam and I'm starting to wire up again another joint connection end. And I have to work my way down each one, doing the same thing. Solder on each connection, heat shrink it down, test each end, make sure it's all good. I have continuity and everything else. And some of these joints were a little difficult to get to solder in. This is a very time-consuming and very tedious process. but very fulfilling when you do get it done and each connection works perfectly. Alright, that covers up the rest of those. Now we have to start drilling holes to allow the wiring to go underneath the layout. Another hole for the backside so that way I can run for the power. And now I can start wiring up the underside. So the first thing I gotta do, wire up the track power to the track connector. There's a separate lead off of this track power that goes over to the tunnel block. Alright, now that I've got that done, I can start wiring up the cables, getting them zip tied up and into place. I've also wired up the DC connection. Zip tying all the wires up, making it nice and tidy. Now that I've got everything wired up as far as soldering is concerned, and now I have to make it all tidy and neat. And unfortunately this is kind of time consuming, but it does look really good when it's done. So I'm just using those self-adhesive little tie-down clamps and then some 4-inch zip ties to hold it all into place. And now you can see what it looks like. And those 3 connectors are the connectors that hook in between each section of my layout. So, time to move on to the next section. Same process all over again. Wire it all up, get it zip tied up, make it look nice and tidy. Had to do some rewiring of the lighting and changing of extension cords, so I had to bunch some stuff up to make it fit right. Alright, now I'm going on to the turnout tunnel section, where I've put this little plate in that allows me to have each positive and ground side, basically, and hook several spades up to one run. Alright, now I've got all the wiring up for that. Now I just got to start wiring it up to the actual switch itself. So the smaller red and black and the larger red and black are actually going to the switch. The ones that I have in my hand and the one that is right by my hand. Alright, again, tidying up everything, making it look nice. And here is the finished product of that. With the switch underneath there. And that is the block. Now I'm going to test by flipping the switch. No power, no power. Flip the switch again. And now I have power. And now you can see I just have these little plastic joiners there. Here is the finished product. So I've got my Raspberry Pi up against the wall, a power cord up against the wall, an external DC Bachmann up against the wall, and everything is pushed in. I made some little plastic clips to hold it into place where none of that slides around. And then I've just got some of my extra tools sitting up front. But it holds together real nice. Everything's buttoned up great. So that's it for this week, folks. Thank you again for watching. Please hit the like and subscribe button and tune in next week for more great action.